Welcome to Red Bandana Gaming, the channel where Logan will show you everything. From gameplay to gear, their crew is here to take you on a journey through every atmosphere. Releases to news, you don't have to choose. Red Bandana Gaming is here for you.
Hey everybody, Logan here. Now, before we get any further into the video, I'm going to warn you there are slight spoilers in this review. Not story spoilers, but plot spoilers, if that makes any sense. For those of you who have played the Dark Pictures Anthology games, you might understand what I'm saying. But I'm warning you ahead of time. Nothing that's going to ruin the outcome of the story, ruin the outcome of the game for you, but yeah, it's just plot points and I guess plot devices, there we go, might be ruined. So I'm going to give you that ahead of time. But with that being said, that out of the way, we're going to review Dark Pictures Anthology, House of Ashes. It is the third in the Dark Pictures Anthology, which is supposed to be 8-game series made by Supermassive Games, those guys and gals who've created Until Dark. That's what most people know them for on the PlayStation 4. But since then, they've come out with Man of Medan, Little Hope, and now House of Ashes, all within the Dark Pictures Anthology. So, apparently my opinion after beating this game, and the story does have multiple endings, branching endings depending on the decisions you make, depending on the characters that live and die. It's been the same on all of Supermassive games that have been like this, so that's not really a spoiler. It's just how the game goes. What I would do, or what I've been doing, is trying to get the best ending where all the characters survive. You have to pay attention to the little things that you do. There are little things that you have to pick up that can actually be foreshadowing. But that's how it's been in every single one of these games that Supermassive has put out, with these narrative-driven games with, I guess you could say, more of a theatrical feel. Now, just like Man of Medan and just like Little Hope, they do have single-player and multiplayer modes, online or couch mode. There's a movie night mode, which is the main one where you can swap the controller between different players sitting on the couch. There's a total of 6 characters that can be played, 5 usually within the main story and 1 within a prologue. Now, there is an exception if you did pre-order it. I was trying to get the game early, but I wasn't able to. But when I did pre-order it and got what's called the Curator's Cut. Now, the Curator is the basically the guy who tells all these stories. So, if you've played in the other ones, you know who he is. Otherwise, you're introduced to him right at the beginning of the game, of all the games. He's the one who basically introduces you to the story. Holds your hand or doesn't hold your hand throughout the narrative. You check back in with him from time to time. Now, how do I say this? Alright, most of the other reviews that were released before the game came out have given this one high praise. I cannot do that. After beating all 3 with multiple endings, the game's not too long. Each game, depending on how you play, 2.5, 3 hours. One of my playthroughs took 4 because I kept going back to try to save certain characters every time I would make a mistake, which, depending on how you choose, you can. Certain times you can't, because it had to do with a decision you made so long before that. But that is the interesting part of these games, of the Dark Pictures Anthology titles. Your decisions matter. Choices matter. reactions matter. And it's more of a cinematic, more of a theatrical feel to these games. So overall, these games are really fun, really enjoyable. But if you're comparing this one to its previous two entries, a lot of other outlets have said this is the best, and they're all horror games. I think this is the worst. Why? Because without spoiling anything major, this really takes from modern day sci-fi horror. It doesn't look like it. It looks like you're set in more contemporary times. It takes place in 2003 in Iraq during the conflict over there, and yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without ruining anything. Basically, it follows a aliens/predator feel. You don't think so, but once you get a little way into it, I'm not going to ruin anything else. I'm just going to let you know. You get a little inkling of that at the beginning. You also get led to believe they're a different type of monster altogether. So, just so you know, like the others, there's monsters in it. These horror games rely on scare and monsters. The thing is, the last two games, Man of Medan and Little Hope, were more horror. This one has a lot more drama until the end, and the end becomes sci-fi horror. I'm not going to give away anything else. All I gotta say is I went, okay, all right, okay, and it wasn't, the game really wasn't scary. It had a few jump scares, some intense moments, but no horror. It really wasn't horror, just because there's death and blood and gore at points. It really isn't that scary. So yes, you're wondering, why aren't I seeing more footage in this review? It's because the amount of gore that's in it, and there's quite a bit of language in it, which would definitely get hit. So I'm going to try to give you as much footage as I can, but most of it is just me telling you about the game. Without ruining any parts of the story, my issues with the game very much came down to camera control. The previous two games didn't have issues with camera like this because you weren't using any weapons. Not like this, not like constantly carrying a gun. You are soldiers, you are U.S. military, as well as using an Iraqi soldier. Now, a lot of this takes place underground, and there's going to be caverns and tunnels that are going to be very narrow. The camera does not work well when you're in these narrow pathways. They did not fix it correctly most of the time. You're over the right shoulder, and it's in a really tight space, so while you're turning around, the character model will move in a way, and then you can't see anything. You're trying to look up and down, and his shoulder or her shoulder is getting in the way, and it just, in certain areas, it just doesn't work. It becomes more frustrating than anything. Most of the game does not have these issues, but there is a good section where you are in these narrow tunnels where it can be very frustrating. All they really needed to do is pan the camera out a little further so you could see more of the character if you're going to do it in third person, which they do for most of the game. Why they couldn't do it for those areas, I don't know, but it became a real issue. Another issue is the control. Just the basic control, camera, character movement in general. If you're someone like me who uses inverted controls, the developers did not take into consideration one of the big issues when it comes to inverted controls. So if you're pressing down, the character's supposed to look up. You press up, character's supposed to look down, like a flight stick. There are many people that use that. It's all about how your brain's wired and whatnot. But we're not going to get into that on here. When you use inverted controls, the camera does tilt up, but the character will still point down. So, for example, some of the characters have guns. And then their guns, if they have a flashlight or something on it, if you're pointing up, because the joystick, for example, the joystick will press down, the character will look down, but the camera will go up. So if you need that flashlight pointed on something, the flashlight's going to be pointed at the ground while the camera's pointed up, and it becomes a big problem. So I had to try to play it with normal controls, the standard controls, and it becomes a little off-putting, because that's not how I play a first-person or a third-person shooter. It's just not the way my brain works. For most people, that's not going to be an issue, but there are a lot of people that do use inverted. And if you are one of those like me, you will have a frustrating time. Otherwise, those are the big issues that I have when it comes to gameplay. Story-wise, like I said, it doesn't feel as much of a horror story as the others. It is polished, it is well thought out, it is well written, but it's not the horror aspect that the previous two had. It doesn't give you that, in my personal opinion. The game is not bad. As a horror game, I would give it a 6 out of 10. As a game overall, I would give it a 7. Mainly because everything is great except for those controls. The camera angles can be rather annoying. Don't go into it expecting horror like the first two, and you're going to enjoy it. It is meant to be short. It's only a $30 game, which is a great price point for a game like that. Whether I really see 8 games coming out of this, no. Unless the next one really picks up and goes back into the horror. Yeah, there are some awesome horror scenes in this, but nothing that I haven't seen in a sci-fi movie. And don't get me wrong, sci-fi is one of my favorite genres, but this is not what I was expecting, and it's not how they've portrayed the series thus far. But that doesn't mean it can't be done correctly. I wanted more horror, monster horror like the last two were. This one is less, and like I said, more sci-fi monster horror. I didn't expect it. Overall, it needed more horror. It needed less drama, better controls. Again, overall, I'm going to have to give it, I would give it a 6.5 overall out of 10 if I had to score it, because of all the factors of the previous games, basically how I've been conditioned from the last two, what to expect, the gameplay, the camera controls, the character controls, the story elements, and then the ending. Now, the ending was really good. They did tie in a little hope into this, which was really cool. But besides that, without spoiling anything else, there is my definitive review for Dark Pictures Anthology House of Ashes. I would recommend picking it up. At $30, it is a solid game. 6.5 if you've played the others. 7 if you have not. It's not a bad title. It's just it has its frustrations to an otherwise really good game. If it didn't have those camera issues, it didn't have those control issues, it didn't have as much drama instead of more horror, and if the story wasn't, I saw that coming, or, oh, they went that way, it would have been a much higher rated game. But overall, I would still recommend, even with the score I gave it, I would still recommend the game. I would say pick up Man of Medan or pick up Little Hope first, Definitely, I think they're on sale right now, depending on what console you're playing it on, whether it be on Xbox or PlayStation, but it's definitely worth picking up. There you guys go. Thank you for sticking it around to the end of the video. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share this video. Put the word out there about the Dark Pictures Anthology. I think it's a great series. Yeah, this isn't its high point, but overall, all three are still very good games at great prices, very enjoyable, especially if you want to do like a movie night, because they, like I said, they offer that within the game. Yeah, make sure you head on over to redbandanagaming.com, follow us on our socials. Check out our spring shop, link in the description below. You can get all kinds of great Red Bandana Gaming merchandise. Like we always say, be legendary. Thanks again.